They are the first family of 90-Day Fiancé Tampa, a sprawling, chaotic clan built on the foundation of Chuck Potthast's real estate business, a sun-drenched empire of flipped houses and rental properties. We see the comfortable, upper-middle-class lifestyle, the nice houses, the boats, the family business that seems to effortlessly support everyone, providing careers and capital for Chuck's entire brood of children. Chuck Potthast is presented as the benevolent patriarch, the king of Tampa who has provided for his entire family, even when they seem to do nothing but fight with each other and their respective partners. For years, we have watched their drama unfold, their petty squabbles, their financial disputes, and their unending suspicion of outsiders. But what if the houses were just the cover? What if the real family business was far more lucrative, far more secretive, and far more illegal? This is a story that goes deeper than reality television. It's a theory that reframes everything you thought you knew about this family. If you want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes and support our deep dive investigations, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to 90-Day Fiancé Universe, and ring the bell for notifications. You won't want to miss a single piece of the puzzle. The investigation begins not with a dramatic confession or a police raid, but with a seemingly minor, almost trivial detail. It starts in the background. For years, the cameras have rolled inside Chuck Potthast's home, capturing family arguments, holiday dinners, and tense one-on-one conversations. And in the background of these scenes, hanging on the walls, placed on mantels, are numerous pieces of art. They are impressive, expensive-looking paintings that lend an air of old money and sophistication to the Potthast home. To the average viewer, they are nothing more than set dressing, tasteful decorations in a wealthy man's house. But they were not overlooked by everyone. According to emerging reports from niche online communities, an independent art history blogger, a devoted fan of the show with a professionally trained eye, became intrigued. This blogger, who runs a small but respected forum dedicated to identifying art in popular media, decided to do a deep dive. The process was meticulous. The blogger took high-resolution screenshots from dozens of episodes, capturing every frame where a piece of art was visible. They cross-referenced, enhanced, and analyzed each piece. At first, the findings were unremarkable. The majority of the paintings were identified as high-quality reproductions, prints of famous works by artists like Monet and Van Gogh, the kind of thing any well-to-do family might display. It seemed like a dead end. But then, the blogger focused on one piece, a small, unassuming painting that often appeared over a side table in Chuck's living room. It was a maritime landscape, dark and moody, depicting a small fishing vessel battling a storm under a bruised twilight sky. It was not a famous work. It didn't match anything in the major art databases, but it had a distinctive style. The blogger noted the aggressive, almost violent brushstrokes used to create the churning sea, contrasted with the delicate, precise rendering of the ship's rigging. This specific technique, this artistic signature, was familiar. After weeks of searching through obscure auction catalogs and digital museum archives, the blogger found a match. The style was stylistically identical, a perfect match to the work of a 19th-century Cuban painter named Javier Vargas. Vargas was a minor master of the pre-revolutionary era, celebrated in his time for his dramatic seascapes of the Caribbean. He was prolific, but his work rarely left Cuba. Then came the revolution. In the chaos and upheaval, Javier Vargas's entire collection, held in a private gallery in Havana, vanished. It was declared lost. Historians presume the collection was either destroyed in the conflict or more likely looted and sold off piece by piece onto the black market. For over 60 years, not a single authenticated Vargas painting has surfaced. Until, this theory posits, one appeared in the background of a reality television show in Tampa, Florida. How does a priceless, lost masterpiece, a piece of stolen Cuban cultural heritage, find its way into the home of a Florida real estate developer? This was the first anomaly, the first loose thread that, when pulled, began to unravel a much darker tapestry. The presence of that single painting opened up a line of inquiry that transforms the Potthast family story from a domestic drama into a potential international crime saga. It suggests that Potthast properties might be dealing in more than just property. With this startling possibility on the table, the focus of the investigation naturally pivots to the family's most controversial figure, the outsider who fought his way into the center of the clan, Andrei Castravet. From the moment he arrived in America, Andrei has been an enigma. His past in his native Moldova has always been deliberately vague, a source of constant suspicion for the Potthast family and viewers alike. He was a detective, he said, Or maybe he was a bouncer. He worked in law enforcement, but the details were always murky, changing depending on who was asking and when. He left his job and his country under a cloud of ambiguity. He was tough, confrontational, and demanded respect, but the source of his hardened demeanor was never fully explained. The Potthasts, particularly Libby's brother Charlie, suspected the worst, that Andrei was running from a criminal past. But what if the truth was the exact opposite? What if Andrei wasn't running from the law? What if he was the law? A new theory pieced together by independent researchers digging into international law enforcement protocols suggests a stunning alternative. These researchers found that Moldovan law enforcement, particularly its specialized detective units, often works in close partnership with Interpol on cases of international art crime. Geographically, Moldova is a key transit point, a crossroads between Eastern Europe, Russia, and the West. For decades, it has been a notorious route for all manner of smuggled goods, including high-value art and antiquities stolen from the former Soviet bloc and, interestingly, from Caribbean nations like Cuba, with which the Eastern Bloc had close ties. An entire division of Moldovan police is dedicated to tracking these illicit goods. Their officers are not simply beat cops. They are highly trained investigators, skilled in surveillance, tracking financial networks, and operating undercover in dangerous international syndicates. According to this theory, Andrei's skill set isn't just being tough. His past isn't as a lowly bouncer or a corrupt detective. His expertise is in investigation, in tracking the intricate pathways of the international black market. He speaks multiple languages, he is physically imposing, he is comfortable with confrontation, and he is intensely observant and suspicious of everyone around him. These are not the traits of a failed cop. These are the essential attributes of a deep-cover operative specializing in the recovery of stolen international assets. The ambiguity surrounding his past, therefore, wasn't a sign of guilt. It was a matter of professional necessity, the carefully constructed vagueness of a man whose real job required him to live in the shadows. He didn't leave Moldova in disgrace. The theory proposes he left on a mission that led him directly to the Potthast family. This brings us to the second act of this unfolding drama, where the disparate threads of a lost painting and a mysterious Moldovan investigator begin to weave together into a cohesive and shocking narrative. The next piece of the puzzle, according to online sleuths, came from an unexpected source: a popular true crime podcast known for its deep dives into unsolved mysteries and cold cases. In a dramatic episode, the podcast host revealed they had been contacted by an anonymous source. This source claimed to be a retired Interpol agent who had spent the final decade of his career working exclusively on art crime cases, specifically focusing on assets stolen from Cuba. For legal reasons, the source refused to name names or provide details that could compromise ongoing investigations. But he agreed to speak in hypotheticals, to describe the profile of a long-running, frustratingly elusive case he had worked on. The description he provided was chillingly specific. He spoke of an investigation into a family-run syndicate based in Florida. This syndicate, he explained, had perfected a method for laundering both money and stolen art through a seemingly legitimate property management company. The model was deceptively simple and brilliant in its execution. The syndicate would acquire stolen art, primarily small but valuable pieces from post-revolutionary Cuba, through a network of contacts in the Caribbean. These pieces were then smuggled into the United States. The real genius, the agent explained, was in how they integrated the art into their legitimate business. The family's company specialized in buying distressed properties, foreclosures, houses in disrepair, which they would then renovate and flip. During the renovation phase, the smuggled art would be physically hidden within the properties. A priceless painting could be sealed behind a newly installed section of drywall, a small sculpture concealed within a wall cavity. The construction sites, with their constant flow of materials and laborers, provided the perfect cover for moving these illicit goods. Once the renovation was complete, the art could be discreetly removed and sold to a curated list of wealthy private collectors who were willing to pay a premium for discretion and a guarantee of silence. The money from the art sale, now black market cash, would be funneled back into the property management company, co-mingled with legitimate funds from property sales and rentals, effectively laundering it. The renovated house itself, now a clean asset, would be sold on the open market, generating even more legitimate-looking income. The retired agent described the syndicate as being notoriously difficult to infiltrate. It was a closed circle, a family affair. Trust was paramount, and outsiders were treated with extreme suspicion. For years, Interpol and other agencies had been aware of the operation, but they could never get anyone on the inside. They needed proof. They needed access to the books, to the properties, to the family's inner sanctum. They needed an operative who could get so close that the family would never suspect until it was too late. This is where the theory presents its most explosive conclusion. Andrei Castravet wasn't just a guy who fell in love with an American girl online. He was that operative. He was an undercover investigator, handpicked for a mission to do what no one else could: get inside the Potthast family. According to this narrative, Andrei's investigation began long before he ever met Libby. He was on the trail of the lost Vargas collection, tracking a piece that intelligence suggested was heading to a buyer in Florida. The trail led him to the periphery of the Potthast syndicate. He learned about their business, their family structure, and their vulnerabilities. And he identified the perfect point of entry: Elizabeth Potthast, the patriarch's daughter. Meeting and marrying Libby wasn't a happy accident of a dating app algorithm. It was a calculated, high-risk move in a long-term intelligence operation. Andrei built a profile designed to appeal to her, initiated contact, and cultivated a romance with a singular goal in mind: to use his marriage as a key to unlock the Potthast empire. His entire journey on 90 Day Fiancé, his move to America, his life in Tampa, it was all part of the cover. He wasn't building a new life. He was executing the most critical phase of his mission. His objective was to get inside Chuck's business, to find the physical proof of the art smuggling: the paintings themselves, the ledgers detailing the black market sales, the contact information for their network of buyers and smugglers. He was there to gather the evidence he needed to dismantle their entire operation from the inside out. He came to America not in search of the American dream, but to end the Potthast's criminal enterprise. With this theory as a lens, the entire history of the conflict between Andrei and the Potthast family is radically reframed. Their decade of bitter feuds, accusations, and standoffs ceases to be a simple family drama. It becomes the visible manifestation of a high-stakes undercover operation, a silent war being waged in plain sight. Every argument, every demand, every awkward family dinner was a move and a counter-move in a dangerous game. Let's start with Andrei's constant and aggressive demands for money. Viewers and the Potthast family saw this as greed, entitlement, the behavior of a lazy freeloader trying to leech off his father-in-law. His demand for a $100,000 loan to start his own business was seen as the height of audacity. But in the context of an undercover investigation, this behavior is transformed. It becomes a classic intelligence gathering tactic. He wasn't being greedy, he was stress testing their financial systems. He needed to understand how they moved money, especially large, untraceable sums of cash. A request for $100,000 wasn't a plea for a startup fund, it was a probe. Where would the money come from? Would it be a clean bank transfer, or would it come from an off-the-books slush fund? How would they account for such a large disbursement? By pushing their financial buttons, he was trying to force them to reveal the hidden architecture of their money laundering operation. He was attempting to follow the money trail. Each time they gave him money for a truck or living expenses, he wasn't just taking a handout. He was analyzing the transaction, looking for the cracks in their financial facade. Then there was his relentless, unyielding desire to join the family business. For years, Andrei fought tooth and nail to be brought inside Potthast properties. He clashed with Libby's siblings, Charlie and Jen and Becky, who saw him as an unqualified, arrogant outsider trying to steal their birthright. Chuck was hesitant, constantly putting up roadblocks, but Andrei was persistent, even belligerent, in his demands. Why? Was it simply about pride or the need for a steady job? The undercover theory argues that this was never about a career in real estate. This was the ultimate goal of his entire mission. Getting a seat at the table, a desk in the office, was the only way he could gain the access he so desperately needed. He needed to see the company's books. He needed to look at the property acquisition records, the renovation budgets, and the list of contractors. He needed to know which properties were being worked on, giving him a chance to potentially locate the hidden art. He needed to understand the flow of money in and out of the company accounts. His fight to join the business wasn't a fight for a paycheck. It was the fight of an investigator trying to get his hands on the primary evidence. The resistance he faced from the family wasn't just sibling rivalry, it was the defensive posture of a criminal enterprise protecting its secrets. This leads us to the family's immediate and unwavering hostility towards him. From day one, the Potthast siblings treated Andrei not just with skepticism, but with visceral contempt. They questioned his motives, his past, his very character. On the surface, it looked like a mix of xenophobia and jealousy. They didn't like his controlling nature or his foreign culture. But what if it was something deeper? What if their criminal instincts, honed by a lifetime in a high-risk, illicit business, were sounding an alarm? Criminal organizations survive on paranoia. They are adept at sensing threats. The Potthast, according to this theory, may not have known what Andrei was, but their gut told them something was profoundly off about him. He didn't behave like a typical fiancé. He was too hard, too inquisitive, too challenging. He didn't know Chuck's authority. He confronted it. He didn't try to blend in. He stood out. Their intense dislike wasn't personal. It was a subconscious, instinctual recognition of a predator in their midst. They sensed he was a threat to their entire way of life, even if they couldn't articulate why. Charlie's drunken rants and aggressive interrogations, Jen and Becky's constant snooping and gossiping, these were their clumsy attempts to expose the danger that their instincts were screaming about. They were trying to unmask the investigator without even knowing an investigation was underway. Perhaps the most telling evidence for this reinterpretation is the infamous trip to Moldova. Viewers will remember the intense tension surrounding Andrei's family meeting Libby's. Andrei was portrayed as being nervous and on edge, ashamed of his humble background compared to the Potthast's wealth. He was cagey about his past, and his friends made cryptic comments about why he had to leave his job as a police officer. The whole trip was a pressure cooker of cultural clashes and family secrets. But seen through the lens of the undercover theory, Andrei's anxiety takes on an entirely new meaning. He wasn't nervous about a culture clash. He was experiencing the sheer terror of an undercover agent whose two worlds were about to collide. On one side, he had his own family, civilians who knew nothing of his true mission, who believed he had simply moved to America for love. On the other side, he had his targets, the very people he was investigating. For an operative, having these two sides meet is the ultimate nightmare scenario. Any slip of the tongue from a friend or family member, any innocent anecdote from his past, could contradict his carefully crafted cover story and blow the entire operation wide open. His nervousness wasn't about being poor, it was the adrenaline-fueled stress of a man trying to maintain a complex lie under the most intense scrutiny imaginable. His friend's vague statement that Andrei had to leave the police force wasn't a hint of corruption. It was likely the sanitized, official line Andrei had fed them to explain his sudden departure for a deep cover assignment. He wasn't managing family introductions. He was managing assets and targets in a live intelligence scenario, and the risk of catastrophic failure was monumental. The entire trip was a tightrope walk over a canyon, and the tension we saw on screen was the very real fear of an agent whose cover was about to be burned. The family drama we consumed as entertainment was, in this light, the nail-biting climax of a secret war. But every operation, no matter how meticulously planned, has a variable that cannot be controlled. Every investigator, no matter how disciplined, has a weakness. For Andrei Castravet, the plan was simple. If dangerous, get in, gather the evidence, and get out. He would use his marriage to Libby as a tool, a temporary alliance to achieve his objective. He was a professional, trained to compartmentalize, to separate emotion from duty. But he didn't count on one thing. He didn't count on the cover story becoming real. He didn't count on actually falling in love with Libby. And he certainly never planned on having a child with her. This was the unforeseen complication, the single devastating variable that changed the entire equation. The narrative of his mission, as pieced together by theorists, now introduces a dramatic and personal twist. What began as a cold, calculated infiltration slowly, imperceptibly, morphed into something else. The moments of tenderness with Libby, the fierce protectiveness he displayed when his family came under attack, the genuine joy at the birth of their daughter, Eleanor. These were not part of the act. The lines began to blur. The man who had been playing the part of a husband and father found that he had, in fact, become one. The birth of his child was the point of no return. Suddenly, the mission was no longer a clear-cut case of right and wrong, of justice versus crime. It was now inextricably linked to the fate of this innocent child. If he succeeded in his mission, if he exposed the Potthast family's art-smuggling empire, what would that mean for Eleanor? She would grow up with her grandfather, her aunts, and her uncles in prison. Her mother would be devastated, her family name disgraced, their comfortable life destroyed. He would be the hero of the investigation, but the villain of his own family's story. He would have to explain to his daughter one day that he was responsible for destroying her entire world. The weight of this dilemma must have been crushing. Andrei became trapped, caught in a web of his own making. He was suspended between two irreconcilable worlds, his duty as an investigator and his love as a father. Every day he spent inside the Potthast family home, gathering more evidence against them, was another day he spent deepening his bond with them, watching his daughter laugh with the very grandfather he was meant to send to prison. The internal conflict must have been immense. To complete his mission would be to betray his family. To protect his family would be to betray his mission, his country, and his own identity. He was no longer just an operative, he was a man forced to make an impossible choice. This internal struggle, this pivotal moment of choice, is the subject of what has been called the smoking gun of this entire conspiracy theory. The same true crime podcast that first broke the story of the retired Interpol agent later released a follow-up episode that sent shockwaves through the online communities investigating the case. They claimed to have received an audio file from an anonymous source, allegedly a disgruntled former colleague within the Moldovan intelligence services. The file was a leaked voicemail, a recording of a call supposedly made by Andrei Castravet to his former partner or handler back in Moldova. The audio quality is poor, distorted, and filled with static, as if recorded covertly from a long distance. Andrei is speaking in his native Romanian. His voice is not the confident, booming baritone we know from television. It is low, urgent, and filled with a raw, palpable anguish. The podcast provided a translation, which they claimed was verified by multiple independent linguists. The content of that voicemail is the heart of this third act. It is presented as Andrei's final report, his official withdrawal from the mission. "It's over," the translated voice begins, hurried and strained. "Listen to me. It's over. I can't do it. I have everything they asked for. I have the proof. I found the ledgers hidden in a compartment in the old man's office. It's all their dates, prices, buyers' initials. It's a dynasty of thieves, just like we thought. I have the locations of 3 properties, 3 of them, where the merchandise is currently stored. I know the shipping routes they use through the Bahamas. I have enough to bring down the entire network, from the smugglers to the collectors. It's a clean case, a career-making case." There's a long pause, filled only with the sound of ragged breathing. "But there's a child," he continues, his voice cracking with emotion. "There's a little girl, my little girl. She looks at him, she looks at the old man, and she sees her grandfather. She doesn't see a criminal. She just sees the man who buys her ice cream. What am I supposed to do? Huh? What am I supposed to do? I came here to be a ghost, to watch and to record, but I'm not a ghost anymore. I live here. This is my life. I cannot be the one who destroys her family. I will not be the reason she visits her grandfather in a prison visiting room. Do you understand me? I will not do it. I'm burning the case. I'm burning it all. Tell them the trail went cold. Tell them I failed. I don't care. I'm out. I'm out." The call ends abruptly. This leaked voicemail, if authentic, is a confession and a resignation. It is the sound of a man choosing his daughter over his duty. It is presented as the definitive proof that Andrei had the evidence to destroy the Potthast family, but at the final moment, his love for his new family overwhelmed his loyalty to his old mission. He made his choice. He would protect his daughter, even if it meant protecting the criminals he was sent to expose. This brings us to the present day, to the uneasy, often confusing dynamic we now see playing out on our screens. The story does not have a happy ending. It has a compromise, a fragile and dangerous truce. The final chapter of this theory concludes that the current state of the Potthast family is not one of healing or acceptance. It is a cold war. Andrei did not simply walk away from his mission and seamlessly blend into the family. He holds a weapon of immense power, the knowledge and the evidence of their entire criminal operation. And according to this theory, they know it. Chuck Potthast, the savvy patriarch who built this empire, is no fool. At some point, he must have realized the true nature of the threat his son-in-law represented. Perhaps Andrei subtly let him know. A misplaced comment about Cuban art, a question about a specific property renovation that was a little too precise. Or perhaps Chuck's own paranoid intuition finally put the pieces together. The result is the same, a stalemate. Andrei has the power to destroy them with a single phone call. The family, in turn, holds his wife and child, the very reason he abandoned his mission, as emotional hostages. This is the foundation of their new relationship, mutually assured destruction. Chuck finally letting Andrei into the business, giving him $100,000, and defending him against his own children was not an act of fatherly acceptance. It was a bribe. It was a desperate act of appeasement to buy his silence. It was the calculated move of a king paying tribute to a rival power he could not defeat, hoping to keep him within the castle walls where he can be watched. Andrei's position in Potthast Properties is not that of an employee, it is that of a warden. He is there to ensure his interests, the safety and stability of his family, are protected. Chuck's generosity is the price he pays for his freedom. The entire family dynamic is now governed by this unspoken arrangement. Every smile is a threat. Every family dinner is a negotiation. The lingering tensions, the sudden flare-ups of old resentments are the cracks in this fragile peace. Charlie's continued aggression towards Andrei can be seen as the lashing out of someone who doesn't understand the new rules of the game. He still sees the old enemy, while Chuck, the pragmatist, sees the necessary, dangerous ally he must keep placated at all costs. The family isn't living happily ever after. They are living in a constant state of low-grade terror, bound together by a secret that could tear them all apart at any moment. The final image of the theory is a haunting one. We saw a recent family gathering. Everyone is smiling for the camera, the picture of a happy, boisterous family. But for a fleeting moment, the camera catches a look between Andrei and Chuck. It is not a look of love or familial warmth. It is brief, tense, and filled with a universe of unspoken understanding. It is a look of acknowledgement between two men who are bound by a secret, a prisoner and his jailer who have traded places so many times they may no longer be sure which is which. The narrator concludes, Andrei Castravet came to America as an investigator, a righteous agent of justice sent to dismantle a criminal empire. But now he is a prisoner of the very family he was sent to destroy. He won a life he never expected, but in doing so, he became a permanent resident of a gilded cage, forever bound by the secret past of Elizabeth's family.